They say vengeance tastes best when it's cold, but this time, trust me, it was served scorching hot. It was a Saturday morning, and I woke up already irritated because the night before, my electricity had abruptly died. The refrigerator stopped humming, the fans quit spinning, and even my Wi-Fi router shut down like it had simply given up on existence. I was too exhausted to investigate right then, so I brushed it off until daylight, telling myself it was probably nothing serious. The next morning, I went to inspect my solar setup. The battery was completely empty. Odd, considering this was my own private system. Something I'd paid for myself, not some shared HOA resource. My first guess was that the batteries were wearing out. That's normal, right? Panels degrade, batteries lose capacity, and eventually you need to swap them out. Even so, something about the timing bothered me. There'd been no warning signs of trouble beforehand, but since it was the weekend, I decided not to worry about it just yet. Then that night, it happened again. The lights flickered, and then everything went dark. Without air conditioning, the heat was unbearable, and I ended up sprawled across the tile floor, sweating and muttering curses at a ceiling fan that wouldn't budge. Now I was genuinely annoyed. Solar batteries don't just fail 2 nights running unless something's clearly wrong. I started cycling through possibilities in my head. Had I underestimated my power usage? Maybe something power-hungry, like the oven, had been left running. Or perhaps the inverter was malfunctioning. None of these explanations felt right, though. I'd invested real money into that system. It wasn't some cheap setup that would quit after a couple of overcast nights. Morning arrived again, and I pulled up the system readout. The numbers simply didn't make sense. The energy drain far exceeded anything my household could realistically consume. At that point, I figured either my equipment was breaking down or something suspicious was happening. I thought about calling in a professional, but a part of me wanted to solve the mystery myself. The curiosity was gnawing at me. By night 3, the situation had become genuinely miserable. My food was going bad in the fridge. I couldn't sleep properly, and frustration was eating away at me. Still, I had no clue what was actually causing these nightly blackouts that were wrecking my life. After several more days of this pattern, I finally witnessed something that left me stunned. It was nearly midnight, and having had enough of another sweaty blackout, I decided to keep watch over the yard myself. And there she was, Karen, our self-appointed HOA overlord, parading around in her bathrobe like she owned the entire neighborhood. She wasn't sneaking off to the clubhouse or minding her business. Instead, she was standing in my driveway, unraveling a charging cable and hooking her gleaming Tesla straight into my solar system like it was a public charging station. I stood frozen for a moment. I'd suspected something was off, but this explained everything. The dead batteries, the outages, the nightly energy that vanished without explanation. Karen had been treating my private solar grid like her own personal fuel stop. I marched outside without thinking twice. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" I yelled. She barely reacted. Wearing that insufferable HOA smirk, she replied, "Calm down, I'm just making use of a community resource." I nearly screamed. "Community resource?" I said, laughing in disbelief. "Karen, this is my private solar grid. I bought it. It's on my land." But she was already rolling her eyes. The HOA rules state that any infrastructure visible from outside becomes shared community property. Your panels are visible, so technically, they belong to everyone. She said everyone like she was some kind of monarch discussing her royal treasury. My hands balled into fists. "No, Karen. This isn't negotiable. What you're doing is theft. I don't want to see your car anywhere near my driveway again, and definitely not plugged into my outlet." She brushed me off like I was some nobody yelling at her feet. "Please. We both know you won't actually do anything. I sit on the board." That comment nearly made me burst out laughing. "If you're on the board," I said, stepping toward her, "then maybe you should test that theory." Her expression tensed briefly, but then she simply turned her back, leaving her car plugged in and humming as it drained my battery dry. That's when it truly hit me. Karen had no intention of backing down. She genuinely believed she was untouchable, protected by her self-imposed HOA authority. And if she assumed my warnings meant nothing, she was about to learn otherwise. I honestly expected that after our confrontation, she'd back off, maybe retreat to lick her wounds. But Karen didn't back down. She escalated. The very next night, her Tesla was parked in my driveway again, its charge light blinking like some kind of parasite feeding off a host. And this time, she wasn't even trying to be discreet. She walked right up and plugged in like she had permanent rights to my property. That's when I realized warnings weren't going to work anymore. This had stopped being about rules. It was about pride. My pride. And if Karen wanted to push her luck, I was going to teach her a lesson she'd never forget. Not a mild warning, but a full-blown wake-up call that my grid was completely off-limits. So I phoned my friend Greg. Greg's an electrician, the type of guy who can glance at a breaker box and recite its entire history. I told him what Karen had been doing and what I wanted done about it. His first response was laughter so intense I thought he'd dropped his phone. But once he realized I was completely serious, he showed up with his toolbox and a mischievous grin. We opened up the inverter panel, and he got busy adjusting settings, rerouting connections, and building in a little surprise. "You'll be able to push this thing well past its safety threshold," he explained. "Next time she plugs in, it won't just be a charge, it'll be a spectacle." I could have clapped like a kid on Christmas morning. "Perfect," I told him. By that evening, the setup was ready. My outlet appeared completely normal, but underneath, it was primed like a coiled spring, waiting for the exact moment Karen tried her usual stunt. And right on schedule, just past 10 p.m., there she was again, strolling into my driveway, humming to herself like she owned the night. She plugged in, pulled out her phone, and leaned against the car, scrolling casually like nothing was wrong. She never noticed the thin wisp of smoke rising from the cable. She never caught the faint crackling sound coming from under the hood. But I saw it all from my window. Then, suddenly, her Tesla erupted with alarms, and she leapt backward like she'd witnessed something supernatural. Then came the explosion. The second I heard the pop and watched smoke billow into the night air, I grabbed my fire extinguisher and rushed outside like some kind of neighborhood hero charging into combat. Karen stood there paralyzed, mouth hanging open, as flames licked out from beneath her precious Tesla's hood. I didn't waste a second. I yanked the pin, took aim, and hit the fire with a full blast, playing the role of savior. Foam sprayed in every direction, coating the driveway and transforming the whole scene into something resembling a bizarre crime scene. Karen staggered backward, coughing, gripping her phone like she couldn't decide whether to call the police, the fire brigade, or maybe Elon Musk in person. I kept the extinguisher going, completely composed, until the flames sputtered out and died. Then I turned toward her, brushed off my hands, and asked in the most innocent, concerned tone I could fake, "What happened here? What happened?" She just stared at me, face flushed red, eyes flicking between me, the outlet, and her ruined Tesla. I stepped closer and said quietly, "None of this would have happened if you'd just stopped plugging in over here." The expression on her face was unforgettable, like she knew exactly who was responsible, but had absolutely nothing to prove it. She'd walked straight into my setup, and all that remained as evidence was a $70,000 hunk of scorched metal sitting in my driveway. Here's the best part. Her insurance provider completely refused to pay for the damage. When she submitted her claim, they started digging and asking uncomfortable questions. Why was the vehicle charging at this particular address? Where was the authorization? Who approved it? Karen had no way to respond without exposing that she'd been siphoning power illegally. Her claim got rejected faster than she could distribute her HOA newsletters. After that night, complete silence. She never said another word to me. No glares, no comments. Not even her usual passive-aggressive HOA notices shoved into my mailbox. She steered clear of me entirely. And most importantly, she never once tried touching my solar grid again. For the first time in weeks, my driveway finally had peace. The end.